I'm Johnny Carroll Sane, and welcome to another episode of Round the Fire on EarthX TV. My guests today are Dr. Christopher Jenkins, who is the CEO of the Orion Society. And he's also the founding chair of the Georgia Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. Also joining us is Jenna Roselle, who is a wild food educator, and she's a hell of a poet too. She may not say that, but I'm one of her biggest fans. She said Chris is in Georgia. Jenna's in the Northeast in Maine. Is that right?
Right.
Jenna? And today we're going to talk about attitudes, hunter attitudes. And it's based on kind of an old study, but this is going to be our foundation. Back in 1978, a behavioral scientist, so probably heavy in anthropology and the softer sciences, Dr. Keller did a study on people's attitudes towards animals. And in this study, he interviewed both hunters and non-hunters and some anti-hunters. And what we're going to focus on today are the attitudes of the hunters. Dr. Keller identified three different types of hunters. The first one was the utilitarian hunter, which is a hunter that pretty much in the description hunts for meat. They typically come from a rural background and have a very practical attitude towards animal use. The second type of hunter he discussed was a dominion hunter, which I guess could best be described as your quote unquote stereotypical trophy hunter, someone that just hunts for bigger animals, mostly for, in his words, what he found out is mostly for ego purposes, and they usually come from a more urban background. And then the third type of hunter was a nature hunter, which is someone that approaches hunting not so much as a way to take something, but as a way to become part of something. And again, this study was done in 1978, so a lot of things have changed in the hunting culture since then. But as a hunter who started out in probably around 1978, I think I was 7 years old at the time. That's when I got my first BB gun. I recognize a lot of these hunter types through the years, and I still recognize them today. And so today what we're going to talk about with Chris and Jenna are these different types of hunters. And so starting off, I want to start off with Jenna.
You know, I didn't start hunting until my mid-20s, and I had a really hard time making that decision. And I think if you were to have asked me why I was hunting then, I would have said utilitarian for sure. Mm-hmm. And I think that was born out of a place of really trying to be a naturalist and like immerse myself, participate as much as I can in my local landscape, which led me to realize that maybe utilizing animals as food was one of the best things I could do for that landscape. And now as time goes on, you know, it is largely utility for me. It's largely food gathering. But I think maybe equal parts I'm appreciating as much how that allows me to interact with my landscape from a naturalist perspective. You know, all of the other things I'm getting from the hunt, mm-hmm. aside from the meat. But also, I have a hard time with the dominion part currently, and definitely when I was younger. I don't think that I would have like wanted to acknowledge that part of myself. But I think that the dominion part, the language is kind of tricky. Like, I don't know why Keller chose the words that he chose to name these categories, but I think, like, if I think about the dominion part of the hunter in myself, I might, like, I do recognize that it's there, but I might call it something else. Like, I might mm-hmm. call it maybe just like the joy that comes from successfully learning a place and learning an animal. Like, some people might call that oh, she's trying to master a place or master an animal or have dominion over it, you know what I mean? But I think that you could also call that something else.
I agree. And before we go to Chris, and I want to get his thoughts on this, but I think that part of the problem with Keller's analysis is that he takes the position that humanity, that men and women, hunters, are separate from nature. That we, I mean, ever since we've been human, we've been hunters. We've been hunters and gatherers. And so there's really, we don't go into nature. We're part of nature. And so we don't go into it with these roles, already in our minds about what we're going into it for. We go into it because I think a lot of it is that's our instinct. That's who we are. And that blending of those three types of hunters is who we were through 4 million years of evolution. Chris, what are your thoughts? Where do you fit in? Do you fit in any of these boxes, or are you a blend of all three?
Well, the first thing I'd say, Johnny, is that, my hunting, I guess I'd call it a career. I hunt, and fish somewhere 150 plus days a year. I mean, it's an integrated thing into my life. And to me, it's just one big lifestyle. And that, as you mentioned, reptiles and amphibians, going out and looking, say, for a rattlesnake as part of a project I'm working on, going out and hunting a black bear, growing a pumpkin in my garden. They're all one thing to me. I don't really differentiate. The way I think of these categories presented by Keller, I almost think of them like a triangle. And I think if you put them on that two-dimensional space where you've got, kind of, let's say, the dominion at the top and the other two at the bottom, and then you could start to figure out where you would put that dot within there, how close or far you are from those. I'd say I'd probably put myself, I'm pretty close to the middle, but a little closer to the bottom of the utilitarian and naturalist. Again, my whole life is built around procuring food in different ways as much as I can from nature, as well as, I'm a naturalist. That's what I do every day for work. I'm constantly spending time in the woods, just engulfing myself in nature and learning about it. But I will say, on that dominion side, I'm going to be, pretty fired up if I can grow a giant pumpkin versus a tiny pumpkin, right? But I am also going to be, I get very fired up about big animals. And I hunt all kinds of animals all over the country, but in particular, hunting mountain white-tailed deer here in the Appalachian range, I get really, really fired up about trying to find the big mountain deer, trying to outsmart them. I will always shoot my 3 to 5 deer, but I can do that in other ways. And then I can have another part of my hunting time that allows me to really just kind of, challenge and outsmart this monarch of the mountains. So again, I'd kind of put myself somewhere in the middle of that triangle as I described it.
I think that's probably a good description of me as well. There's an argument to be made that trophy hunting is simply an extension of the desire to get more food. Well, I go back to, I've read a lot about the people of the Kalahari Desert, the San people, who are one of the last hunter-gatherer cultures. And I think, I'm not exactly sure where they are now, but they're quickly diminishing. Their culture is quickly dying. But I watched a video narrated by David Attenborough, and where they chased down a kudu. And they chose the biggest kudu bull to chase down precisely because he offered more meat and because his horns weighed him down. They caused him to tire quicker. So I think there's an argument to be made for again, trophy hunting is an extension of that. A desire to get more meat. Now, I'm not going to deny that there's not ego involved in that, because there is. I'm with you. We live on venison. I need 3 to 4 deer every year to get our family through, because we don't like to buy meat from the grocery store. But I've got 2 buck tags, and the first legal buck that walks by is probably going to get an arrow or an arrow shot at it. But the second one, I'd kind of like to play the game. I'd kind of like to learn his habits. I'd kind of like to learn the country better, learn where he sleeps, where he eats, how he moves through the day. I don't know that I do that to stroke my ego so much, but it's actually a way to, in some ways, become a more of a nature hunter. I have a better understanding of not just that deer, but deer in general when I spend that amount of time chasing one particular animal. I know Jenna, in the conversation we had, I think over email, Jenna said she was trying to target a specific buck, and it was the first time she'd ever done that. Would that be something similar to what you experienced, Jenna, that it was almost a deeper relationship with the animal by targeting that one specific animal?
Like my coming from a naturalist intent kind of begets the utilitarian intent, and then kind of begets we can call it dominion because that's the word we're working with, but I would call it something else. But yeah, I think that's where that drive comes from, is for me. Like, I'm not going to say that there aren't purely like doministic hunters out there that really are just trying to like conquer things.
Oh yeah.
But I don't think there's that many of them, honestly. I think that they maybe are portrayed badly, but if you were to dig in and see like what is actually driving them to maybe be a trophy hunter or, you know, whatever else, I think a large part of it is that joy and satisfaction that comes with feeling like you're starting to really get to know a place. Mm-hmm. And that you know your place in that place, and like you know how to relate to everything else in that place. Like, that's a really great feeling. And so yeah, I have not seen that buck again, but
that's the way it goes. A lot.
Yeah. But I'll be back Saturday, and you know, it's all I'm thinking about.
Yeah. And when you learn a country, and I think both of you are, again, very similar to me. That's one reason I wanted you to be part of this conversation. Your relationship to the animals is very closely tied to the land. You know, Chris is big on those mountain deer in Appalachia. Jen is big on the Northeast, pretty much all the wildlife and the flora and the fauna. And I'm the same way. I'm in the Ozarks. Knowing these specific deer are what's important to me, or knowing these specific ecosystems. So, you know, like we talked about, targeting one specific animal because it's big, or for whatever reasons you want this specific animal. And, you know, in the process of trying to figure this animal out, you learn the land, you learn the ecosystem better. Isn't that kind of a, you know, it's a backdoor way, I guess, to introduce, I don't even know if introduce is the right word, but it's a backdoor way for hunters and anglers to realize that they already are invested in our lands and waters, our public lands and public waters, and that, you know, to tie this into environmental issues, that protection of these places, these sacred places, are vital to this relationship they have with these animals. It's all connected. And, you know, I come from a background, again, probably similar to both of you guys, where I was catching animals, little lizards and frogs and mice, or even caught bats, which I probably shouldn't have when I was a kid, you know, and just to look at them and, you know, and try to understand them a little bit. But a lot of people, you know, and in the course of that, I was probably at a younger age more aware of dangers and threats to waters and lands. But is this an avenue that you think the hunting community maybe could use to bring more hunters and anglers into environmental awareness, into that fold, and maybe even environmental activism?
You know, here in Georgia, and this is not knocking any type of hunting, but you know, we have a lot of people hunt here. We have one of the largest hunting populations in the country, and you know, there are a whole variety of styles and interests, but we do have a fair amount of hunting where, you know, somebody will drive an ATV 20 yards from a metal tree stand above a human cultivated patch and, shoot the animal and then bring that animal off to the processor. And, one of the things that we're working on doing at, Georgia chapter of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers is really trying to get a little bit more of this, let's call it the naturalist, hunter, thought process into these people, because one, as you mentioned, I think it will help the environment overall because everything is connected, and make their hunting better in the long term. But the other piece I often like to use is to turn that around and say, I think one of the most valuable things that helps me be so successful in hunting is my knowledge of nature. It is, that I can identify different mushrooms and the timing of certain flowers and, all the phenology of these woods and, just piecing it all together. I think it gives you a much more holistic view of nature, helps you understand more what that particular animal, let's say a deer, is doing at a given time, and it's going to make you a much better hunter. And really, I think it's going to make you enjoy it a lot more. It's when you're sitting in that highly contrived situation that I talked about. Don't get me wrong, I sit in tree stands at times, but when you sit in that highly contrived situation, I could see where it becomes more about the amount of bone or antler on an animal's head. You've just taken so much of this, the whole picture. You've taken it away. You've controlled it all, and people would be better hunters, and I think would enjoy it more if they would really link into nature. And again, to finish up, I think it would be important for maintaining hunting for the long term because it would help conserve the environment, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I agree with you. It makes the experience richer. And I come from I've hunted over food plots. Now I still hunt out of a tree stand, but I'm a bow hunter, and I have not figured out how to kill these super wired whitetails from the ground with a bow consistently. So I hunt out of a tree stand, but I hunt public land, and I usually try to get off in places that other people don't go. And since I've really made an effort to do that, I guess probably 5 or 6 years ago, where I do that exclusively. My experience has been richer.
Yeah, I think the enjoyment and like the reverence that comes with spending time in wherever your place is maybe not highlighted enough in the hunting world. I don't think everybody needs to hunt in order to, love their place. There's a million different ways to love a place, and like everybody can find their own way. But I think the fast track, or really the only way to foster that kind of relationship, is to have direct experience with your place in whatever way you prefer. Take a walk, have a sit, look at birds, whatever. It doesn't have to be hunting. Like you said, the hunting kind of has been like the culmination. Like that's where I've ended up through years of, stepping from one kind of direct experience with a place to another, to another, to another. I have ended up as a hunter, but I'm still many other things, and they all bring me equal joy. It might be like the only way to protect these places, but just any place that we still have access to is worth knowing and loving and using and protecting.
I would say that, again, I do think a sense of place is a really valuable thing, as you're talking about. It's a really a rich thing, as you say, and it's so important to me, whether it be here or other places that I hunt around the country. They're so special, and kind of like I'm talking about this, the value that understanding the whole of nature, brings to your hunting experience, and, and how valuable it is in helping you be successful. I think developing this sense of place, and whether it be tradition through your understanding the environment, just really makes hunting such a better experience for people. And so, here in Georgia and beyond, we're hoping to to get those messages out to the hunting community and get some of those people who try to completely control everything and detach themselves from the environment while harvesting an animal to just take some of that in, because I think it'll make hunting much more rich. I think that's a great word for it. And I think it will help perpetuate hunting into the future, because again, it just makes it such a better activity. Sense of place is great. Place has always been important to me, whether it be hunting or other things. I have 2 children, and I take them all over the world and they get to see great things, but there's certain places, whether it be like one little high mountain basin that's so special to me in Idaho, or, swamp bottom down in Georgia. And so what I'm doing in my will is I'm having them cremate me, and then they need to take me and they need to bring me to these different places. And they're all places like that I wish for them to see, and that I have an important sense of place around. So yeah, I'm going to force my kids to spread me in all these places, but it's for their own good.
That's a morbid note to end on. But
I'm kind of excited about it, actually.
But you did make a great point there that we should have talked on earlier, that I do believe that this attitude that we're talking about, this holistic view as a hunter of the natural world, is absolutely essential to hunting going forward in the future. I'm not so much concerned about anti-hunting sentiment shutting down hunting in the future, but I am concerned about apathy toward these places that we must have to hunt and fish. That's what concerns me more than anything. And so if we can get this, not only the next generation, but our generation. I know Chris and I are Gen Xers. Aren't you, Chris? You're not much younger than me.
I'm 46 years old.
Okay, yeah, you're just a few years younger than me. Okay, so we're Gen Xers. So our
I might
generation,
be grayer, but I'm younger.
I've got 3 years on you.
Okay.
And then Jenna's generation and my kids, and I've got grandkids. For these generations to have these places, I think that this is very important, that hunters and anglers, again, take this holistic view of what we do, of our lifestyle, and turn that into not only acknowledgement of the need to address a lot of these environmental issues, public land issues, but also to advocate for these places vocally at the ballot box. That's where we're going to make a difference. And I think we're out of time now for sure.
We are sportsmen, and we are in trouble. We've learned what happens when we underestimate a serious threat. We can't make that same mistake with climate change. We need to stand up for America and for our kids and grandkids. Make your voice count in 2020.